Yo, 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 yo. What is going on, CoD Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and we're going to be popping off some shotties, boys. And girls, of course, or the grills, as we call them. Today, we are going to be breaking down a problem that is being created by the community, and at the same time, them then calling for the problem to be addressed. It is pretty hypocritical at the end. But what is this problem? Well, it is about migration. It is about recruitment. It is about how kingdoms are being populated and what the approach is for them once kingdoms have been established, and why this is factoring so heavily into things like unbalanced matchmaking, like kingdoms, more kingdoms becoming deader, if you will, or more inactive at a higher rate, why it's factoring into more imbalanced kingdoms within the game, and all of these are directly connected. There's a lot here, so I'm going to show you some data, some screenshots, and then we're going to have a little bit of a conversation here at the end. So let's start off with, as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure you throw us some, because the community might love me even more for this, right? So let's first explain what is happening at the root in order for us to talk about what is happening right now at present with kingdoms that have been a little bit more established, that are a number of seasons in, a little bit older. So I'm going to show you some screenshots real quick. And these screenshots are from kingdoms. Let me see here what we have. I have to, oh, good. I am scrolled down. Lovely. So these kingdoms are from 387 through 407. And what we're going to show you is essentially a consistent level of imbalance and how kingdoms early on are adopting this mega alliance, kind of super alliance approach that you often hear me speak about when it comes to kind of like the player psychology behind why players, alliances, and kind of kingdoms do what they do. And so here's kingdom starting from 397 all the way to 407. I'll kind of go through these a little quick so it don't take too long. But you'll see imbalance, right? Mega alliance approach. This is a little bit better, but still imbalanced. We have imbalanced mega alliance, imbalanced mega alliance. Again, not too active, but again, still imbalanced. We have imbalanced mega alliance, just imbalanced in general. Probably still imbalanced, but mega-ish again. But this is more imbalanced mega alliance, imbalanced mega alliance. We have imbalanced. This is actually nice and does make me a little moist downstairs, if you know what I mean, because I am excited about when I see alliances that are taking more of a balanced kind of sharing is caring. Let's hold hands while we're walking down the street, not awkwardly because we kind of don't or maybe do know each other depending on the day. This is what I want to see. I personally believe that there are a lot more long-term benefits that you get from having balanced alliance approaches in a kingdom versus having imbalanced alliance approaches. However, we'll dive into those things maybe another day. Again, imbalanced mega, just imbalanced. Imbalanced mega-ish, we have imbalanced mega-ish, imbalanced mega-ish, right, imbalanced mega-ish, and then imbalanced mega-ish, right? So you're seeing a trend here. 1 out of 20 kingdoms really had more of a purer, balanced approach. Now, this is pretty standard. Let's really hammer this point home by looking at a larger pool of kingdoms. So we have, this is when I pulled this data, I think it was about 2 months ago or so, because I think we had only gone up to, I think, this one here. So 356, right? So the first 356 kingdoms we looked at where we wrote this down on if they were, I shouldn't say that. I should go off of how many we did here. So let's see, let me count this. So, you know what, let's do it this way. This is what we'll do. So let's look at how many kingdoms are here, just so we have a good range, because I don't want people to be like, oh, well, he didn't count everything. So. Okay, let's do this. And then we'll tally this up, okay? Just, again, so we do things accurately. And we'll scroll up here. Where am I at? I'm at 199 so far. Let's do this. And then we'll go up here. I'll do one there, and then these. Okay, so out of 270 kingdoms, just so we're on the same page, let's look at how many kingdoms are balanced versus not out of 270. So we'll do this, bum bum, and that brings us to 10, right? So whatever that is, that's probably like 2.7, right, or something like that. Let's just do some quick math here, right? I clearly don't know math. 3.7, whatever, I was off. So 3.7% of those kingdoms are balanced. Now, this is pretty standard. This is a very small minority amount. This is probably plus minus if we go and we do another pool again. But this is what you usually get across kingdom builders, not just limited to Call of Dragons. Why is this? Well, it's because, one, you have a leaderboard, and two, you have to understand that when you are getting populated into a new kingdom, is that the likelihood of an expectation being there to say, oh, well, we're going to work with everyone or every leader, right? And let's go back in game so I can maybe show this off. So if I go here and I scroll down, let's just go to the leaderboard. And let's say, for example, this is a brand new kingdom, even though it's not. Stay with me. If you were to have an expectation that the top 10, top 20 kingdoms in a new kingdom are all going to reach out to each other, want to get into a Discord group chat, maybe want to get into a voice call, have everyone go around singing Kumbaya and sharing what their thoughts are on the kingdom and how they want to build, and yeah, let's all try to work together in some degree where it's at least at minimum just not an all-out shiitake mushroom fest, I would tell you that you're kind of cray-cray, because that just doesn't happen. It doesn't mean that it will never happen or it has never happened, but the likelihood of that happening is it's just not a high percentage thing. It's a very, 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 very low percentage thing. And so because of that, the way that, and again, I'm not saying only because of that, there's obviously other factors as well, but if we're kind of focusing on the two most important ones, it's the fact that there's a leaderboard and people want to be at the top, and two is that you have to understand kind of what the standard player psychology is when you're coming in, and then the efforts that these people have to go through, right? So I guess you could say three top things, have to go through to get to that kind of a point. And it's just very unlikely those things will happen. And so what do we get? We get this kind of Darwinism effect, right? The survival of the fittest, where people just want to climb the pyramid. They want to climb the ladder, right? Which is, i.e., the leaderboard. And so because of that, you get most of the time, if not every time by default, kingdoms will always inherently be imbalanced, and they will always inherently be going down this path unless exterior or ulterior actions are taken of becoming this kind of mega alliance structured kingdom. And so now let's look at some data from beyond, right? So let's look at an example of some alliances from here, where we pulled this data on the 3rd of July, so about a month ago. And these were the 119 kingdoms going into SOS, which is the latest KVK season. And you could see here, look at just the differentials. Now, 23 is obviously kind of somewhat of an exception-ish because they were able to basically get a lot more power in and a lot more players in, and they're pretty much running, two more or less balanced alliances right now. But if you exclude them, at one point before it was not like that. But let's look at number 2. So 61, 16.7 to 7.6, again, mega alliance. 24, 25 bill for the power, 14.5, 18.3, okay, mega alliance. And we have the Kingdom 70, 17.8, 7, okay, mega alliance, right, imbalanced. 20.5, 4, mega alliance imbalanced. Number 1, this is, I would say, mega-ish, right, but still imbalanced. This is mega-ish imbalanced. This is mega alliance imbalanced, 13 to 1, right? These are number 1, number 2. Mega-ish imbalanced, mega-ish imbalanced, mega alliance imbalanced, mega-ish imbalanced, mega-ish imbalanced. Okay, this is balanced, 90 at the time. Mega alliance imbalanced, right? Mega-ish imbalanced, mega alliance imbalanced. Like, you see the trend, right? And these are top kingdoms in the game. A number of these kingdoms are in the top 25 that regularly make my top 25 kingdoms list for all the kingdoms that are in the game. And this is the data that we pulled from the 19th, right? So this is, 10, 11 days ago. Now let me get to what I really want to get to, which is, what is the problem? And then, how can we maybe fix it? So the problem is, what I believe is just straight up the barefaced. Sorry, let me show you one more thing before I really make some claims. You will notice how even though these kingdoms are already. Oh, sorry. Let me. I have to show you one more thing here, right, to really hammer the point home. So you need to also understand the cap. So the way that kingdoms work right now is they very much more go off of a power threshold and not necessarily a player capacity. So an example is that if I go back in game and let's say we zoom out and I'm going to go to my overview and I'll just click on anything for pre-war and I'm going to click on this, you'll see that there's 300 slots for every single activity level with the exception of full. Now, partly this kind of doesn't make sense because the activity should determine how much total activity and arguably give you somewhat of a power range on where that kingdom sits versus another. So you would assume that someone who's crowded, almost full, would not have the same amount of spaces available to them as someone who's normal. Now, what's funny is that's how this used to work. Normal actually used to give you 350 slots or spaces. Active in yellow used to give you 200. And then crowded, we always kind of figured or just like to believe that it was somewhere around 75 to 100, right, before you hit full. Now, I'm sure many people, that probably would make sense. But then you look at the current system and you're just kind of scratching your head and like, I just don't get it, right? Okay, well, now let's look at the power cap. So the cap that we have now known, this is recent data that I pulled about 5 days ago. And you'll see here that Beleren Season 2 comes in now for basically if there's no word here, that just means it's full, right? So we estimate that the cap here is probably around 22 to 23 billion, right, for those going into Beleren Season 2. Going into Tamara Season 1, it's probably around 12 to 13 billion, probably about 12 billion for Beleren Season 1, or sorry, that was Tamara Season 1 and then Beleren Season 1. For Pre-Strife, it's still crowded, but it's kind of shocking because you have a 13.3 billion kingdom, whereas is stronger than anyone in Beleren Season 2, hence they're not full, so somewhat scratching my head on that one. Season 2, no one was full, but highest was 9.3. Season 1, no one was full, but highest was 6.3. So now you kind of have an understanding of what the caps are. And now let me show you what I think really kind of hammers this point home that I'm going to bring up in a moment. Is that Rusty had made a post here. This was back when you had a number of these kingdoms that were trying to get players into them, right? So kingdoms like Nawar, TFS, EIS, BXS, etc., right? Anyone that was involved in that. I'm not saying all of them are. I'm just kind of giving some examples of some that may have. And so anyone else that was looking to get more players into their kingdom at the time, but they couldn't because of them going to full status. So where it says, we become aware of the overcrowding situation on the target migration servers. In response, we would like to inform Lords that we will be adjusting the capacity of the SOB2 season servers today. Upon completion of this operation, each server will be able to accommodate an additional 30 to 50 Lords. This was mainly done because a number of these kingdoms hit full status and they were trying to get more players in within groups that wanted to come to them or friends that finally were able to migrate to them but couldn't. And then, of course, anything else that may have applied. And so where this gets me, where I really want to hammer this point home, is that this is completely unrealistic because this is the problem that they are creating for themselves and then complaining about the problem that they themselves created. Now, what is this problem I'm talking about? Well, let me really simplify this. You are having top kingdoms / and or top alliances that are filling out pretty much 90%, give or take, of their kingdom influence into one alliance. And so when that alliance fills up or when the kingdom fills up and they're either A, not able to get more players in because the kingdom influence has been hit and the alliance is full, or if the alliance is not full and it's been hit, this is what I'm talking about. Because of the fact of how they are going about recruiting and doing migration, and because of how kingdom builders and this mentality has been set from season 1 all the way to now, when you eventually get to things like recruitment and migration phases, who do you think they're recruiting? You have to understand kingdom influence. Let's define this, right? So let's go here, and I'm going to show you what the factors are that have been publicly stated from that go about kingdom influence. So you have an understanding. Let's really make sure we're all on the same page here. Kingdom influence, as of was posted on January 24th, this is, I think, this is either the same day or a day plus or minus from when they publicly stated this at the time. That was earlier this year. They stated that kingdom influence was factored off of individual player influence, which was combined of your current power, your growth, your power growth, merits, hero star levels, heroes awakened, artifact level, your legion count, and war pet skills. Now, they have not publicly came out and stated that this is not the case anymore or that things have changed outside of COD CS and some others, but I want to see an official statement. So if we're operating off of what has been stated so far, and then we understand that these kingdoms are getting full because of the way that they're recruiting. Do we think that these top kingdoms and or alliances are recruiting, I don't know, 20 to 25 to 30 mil players so they can have a higher amount of total activity, and then hoping that those players will either convert and potentially spending or just being super active to then where they will be able to contribute to the game or to their kingdom and fighting and KVK? Or are they recruiting, on average, more likely, stronger players? This is where the hypocrisy comes in for me, is that on one hand, you are recruiting strong players, even if we're just talking like bare minimum T5, 55 mil, 50 mil, 60, right, give or take, and you're recruiting these people in, or higher on average. And we're talking top kingdoms, top alliances. I'm sure maybe others do it too, and we're not, and also at the same time, we're not saying everyone does it. But the problem I have, why it is frustrating and almost infuriating to me, is that you have any of, and I'm talking any of the kingdoms and alliances that participate in this, and you know who you are. If you are recruiting from the 1% pool to get into your 1% pool, and then you complain about how, oh, well, the pool isn't strong enough because now I filled the pool up, and if I keep filling it and we're going to overfill, how are people going to swim when the waves don't spread? No, bro. You are the problem. Do not blame this on the devs. Take some freaking accountability. And let's just be real. Let's have an honest conversation about it. Is that you cannot recruit the top 1% of people, and again, on average, and then when you fill up and you can't bring in your peeps or you can't bring in your friends, you complain that you need the cap to be raised. Dude, go kick some rocks. That is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. And again, this is why kingdom builders and kingdoms have these kinds of problems. Because no one's taking, again, for those that participate and consistently do this, that's who we're talking about, no one takes any accountability. Where's the responsibility that you're taking? Because I don't see it. And so that is what infuriates me, is that because of how the mindset is being established from season 1, how it continues, how kingdoms and alliances that participate in these styles and types of recruitment will consistently do it from season to season to season. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, well, and then they come out with something like Warband. They allow for you to have multiple alliances that can engage and participate in a number of things. And they're really making, I feel, good, decent changes in a direction of going from an alliance-focused game to a kingdom-focused game where you can have multiple alliances and potentially hundreds, if not maybe 1,000 players active in your kingdom, but you still have kingdoms that are opting to fill their kingdoms and alliances with the creme de la creme, like the best people that they can get based on their criteria. And more often than not, it's stronger players rather than it would be something like the median average power for a kingdom, right? So instead of having the rising tide lift all boats, they want their rising tide just to lift a little bit right here. And so that is what gets me, because it makes absolutely no sense. Now, do I understand why people do that? Do I get it? Sure. But at the same time, we cannot be the ones who are creating the problem and then complaining about the problem that we created, hoping that the developers are going to solve it for us. This is where I actually just want the devs to come out and say, okay, look, these are what the power caps are per kingdom, and that's how it's going to be. These, and then just lay out the options. You can either A, recruit to where you're going to fill it up and you're only going to be able to have one alliance, or you can recruit to where you're going to have multiple alliances. And then they say, well, right, and then they hopefully keep making adjustments where the game is going to go in more of a kingdom-focused approach where you can have where the kingdoms that have multiple alliances are going to be able to have some advantages, right? It doesn't mean that maybe it's going to be overwhelming, but I very much believe that that will lead to longer-lasting and better sustainable gameplay for the average player. And PvP in KVK, which is basically what the top kingdoms and alliances probably care about the most, right? Outside of things like Roots of War, etc., right? And having a nice social community. So that is where, like I said, it gets me. And I'm not going to apologize. Or you know what? I will apologize. To absolutely effing no one. Gosh, man, it feels good just to be a little dirty sometimes. I'm joking, but not really. So this is all to say that, and now I want to give you an example here to kind of round things off, because this is my worry. And we talked about it when we've been talking about basically what has been so far the most disappointing KVK, which has been the largest and strongest KVK in history thus far. And this is where I really hope that we're not going to get to. So you have the strongest KVK right now, which is basically coming in at probably 110 bill over at the moment after the Brink of War training phase, which is the Rocky OTC event that happened before Season of Strife, right? This is where we have Noir, TFS, EIS, and BXS, right? It's the largest KVK in the history so far. Previous one was at 107 billion. That was for last season. You have a situation here where this is the matchup right now after Brink of War, right? Where you have Noir, TFS, and they're at 199, 100 million plus players. Again, this was at a 50 mil threshold, right? I should state that. You had 566 T5s at a 50 mil threshold and above. They came in at about 55.061 billion power. EIS and BXS totaled about 587 for the amount of 50 mil plus players. Their combined power was 48.899 billion. This is rounded to the nearest millionth, of course, and they had 124 100 million plus. So now, right, you might look at these numbers and say to yourself, okay, well, this doesn't maybe seem that bad, right? There's, 21 differences. If you look at the middle numbers, right, that go in favor of EIS, BXS. However, there's 6.162 billion power advantage on the TFS Noir side, and they also have 75 more 100 mil pluses. So then you're probably like, okay, well, like the first number didn't seem that bad, but then the next two numbers are like, geez, this is no bueno. Okay, so now, just so I can really hammer the point home, let's go and look at how their KVK is doing, right? So let's go in here, and let's look at how the matchup is. Now, there are other factors as well, but I do at least want to show this off. So if we look at how this area is going, which is Sophrostia, this is one of two neutral zone 2s in this KVK, where you have the BXS, SXB on that side, we have TFS and AFS up here. I mean, their fighting lasted, I think someone said about 10 hours or less, is what we talked about. Someone said maybe 7 to 8, others have said about 10 hours, right? But it is pretty much around 10 hours or less is how long the fighting lasted when you have two of the strongest kingdoms and two of the strongest alliances in the entire freaking game. And it only lasted about 10 hours. Now again, like we talked about before, maybe BXS and SXB just decided, we're just not going to sit here and go all in on Sophrostia, right? Maybe we'll wait for Zone 3 once the level 4 passes, and then we'll really commit because that'll probably be a lot more important. Okay, right? And anything else that maybe could have happened. Okay. Well, let's go over here and look at Agoru, right? Because EIS didn't come in here. However, they did come into Vola, and TFS and AFS did, I believe, have done a couple skirmishes, but it wasn't an all-out fight like it was with BSS and XXB. And then we go over to Noir, right? And they're going, and again, they're opposite of EIS and EIL. But again, there really hasn't been anything, right? There's been, I think there was a few small skirmishes near the passes and maybe in this open field area here closer to the pass, but nothing, again, like basically what happened. So really, we've had one out of potentially 4 matchups that could have happened. And part of it is looking at how matchmaking is factored, but also how kingdoms are being built. If you are just focusing on trying to have the strongest alliance and recruit the strongest people, or on average the strongest people, and you are creating a situation where the total power is not as balanced as it could be in relation to other kingdoms, you will more than likely have situations where you will get unbalanced KVKs that, guess what, isn't fun for anyone. Because what's the number one thing that top players, top alliances, and top kingdoms want to do more than anything? They want to fight. Now, do you think they want to fight for 10 hours? Or do you think they would rather fight for 10 days? I would argue they'd rather fight for up to 10 days. Right? I mean, anything longer than a day. I mean, one of the most exciting KVKs that we saw was the TFS Noir fight that happened in Bellerin Season 1, where they fought pretty much the entire KVK. And for the first 2.5 to 3 weeks, they were going at each other's throats every day there was action. Damn, was it enjoyable. That's what we want. And so again, this is why, yes, there are opportunities on the developer side for how matchmaking is factored, but at the same time, there are just as many opportunities that the kingdoms and the alliances can take accountability and responsibility for in how they're building themselves. Don't just think that it's only on the devs. So again, that is where I'm going to leave it. I hope you enjoyed. I'd love to hear your thoughts. This was a fun one. I felt like I let myself a little loose. Like I let it go a little bit. It feels good to be a little risque sometimes. Okay, I'm done.